Imagine living in a quiet town where everyone knows each other, and then finding out that the person smiling at you in the marketplace is secretly hunting human beings. Not animals, not criminals, human beings. In 1829, whispers spread across the borderlands of Maryland and Delaware about a woman whose name carried fear in every syllable. Patty Cannon, a woman accused of kidnapping, enslaving, and even killing free African Americans. Tonight, on Night Archive, we're stepping into one of the darkest and most disturbing true crime stories in early American history. And trust me, this one only gets worse the deeper we go. Before we begin, if you're drawn to forgotten crimes, buried secrets, and the chilling stories history tried to hide, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Night Archive. It truly helps the channel grow, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. In the early 1800s, the line between Maryland and Delaware was more than just a border. It was a thin, dangerous edge between slavery and freedom. Maryland was a slave state. Delaware, too, allowed slavery, but many free black communities lived scattered across the region. Tensions were high, laws were loose, and enforcement was inconsistent. In that chaos, people like Patty Cannon found opportunity. Patty Cannon wasn't what most people expected. She wasn't some shadowy outlaw hiding in the woods. She was known in her community. She owned property. She ran a tavern and boarding house. She appeared, at least on the surface, like a strong frontier woman surviving in a rough world. But beneath that image, authorities later claimed she was running something far more sinister. A gang that kidnapped free African Americans and sold them into slavery in the Deep South. Picture this, it's night, a knock at the door, or maybe no knock at all. Armed men burst into a small cabin. A free black family is dragged out, screaming, confused, begging for proof of what they supposedly did wrong. They are bound, marched through the woods, hidden in wagons, and transported hundreds of miles away. By the time anyone realizes they're gone, they've vanished without a trace. And here's where it gets even darker. Many of these victims were not escaped slaves. They were free citizens. They had documents. They had families. They had lives. But papers could be stolen. Identities could be erased. And in a time when racism was deeply rooted in law and culture, their voices often meant nothing. Patty Cannon was accused of leading what was known as the reverse Underground Railroad. Instead of helping enslaved people escape to freedom, this network captured free black men, women, and children and forced them into slavery. Let that sink in. A system designed purely for profit, built on human suffering. According to testimonies gathered later, Cannon's gang would target isolated homes. They preferred free black families because they could be sold without an owner coming forward to claim them. Some victims were beaten into submission. Others were chained in hidden rooms or barns. There were even rumors of underground pits used to hold captives temporarily before transport. The fear spread quickly. Free Black communities began to live in constant anxiety. Parents warned their children not to wander alone. Neighbors formed watch groups, but the kidnappers were organized and ruthless. They knew the terrain. They knew how to avoid suspicion, and they had connections further south, where enslaved labor was in high demand. But what kind of woman was Patty Cannon? Some descriptions portray her as physically imposing, with a commanding presence. Others say she was calculating, calm, and disturbingly practical. She wasn't just following orders. She was allegedly orchestrating operations, negotiating prices, managing captives. And then there are the rumors that make this story almost unbearable. Stories that some captives who resisted too strongly simply disappeared. No sale record, no sighting in the South, just gone. In 1829, the silence finally began to crack. Authorities received reports of suspicious activity near Cannon's property. Whispers had grown too loud to ignore. When law enforcement finally moved in, what they reportedly discovered shocked even seasoned officers. According to historical accounts, they found imprisoned individuals on the property. And even more disturbing, skeletal remains were allegedly uncovered nearby. Think about that. Not just kidnapping, but possibly murder. Patty Cannon was arrested. The charges were severe: kidnapping and illegal enslavement. But before a full trial could take place, something happened that added another layer of mystery to her story. She was found dead in her jail cell. Official reports suggested suicide. Some claimed she poisoned herself. Others whispered that she may have taken her own life to avoid public execution or to prevent further secrets from coming out. But conspiracy theories began almost immediately. Was she silenced? Did someone fear what she might reveal? Without a trial, many details were never formally documented in court. That left space for legend to grow. Some accounts may have been exaggerated over time, but there is no doubt that kidnapping free African Americans into slavery was a real and documented crime in that era. And Patty Cannon's name became permanently tied to that brutal trade. The aftermath was chilling. Families searched for missing loved ones who never returned. Some victims were eventually traced to plantations in the Deep South. Others were never found. Imagine the grief of not knowing whether your child was alive or dead, enslaved or killed. That kind of trauma doesn't disappear. As the story spread, Patty Cannon's home gained a reputation. Locals spoke of hauntings, of restless spirits, of strange sounds at night. Whether those stories were born from guilt, fear, or imagination, they reveal something important. The community knew something terrible had happened there. What makes this case even more unsettling is how it exposes a forgotten chapter of American history. We often hear about the Underground Railroad, a symbol of courage and resistance, but fewer people talk about the reverse network, the organized kidnappings, the corruption, the exploitation of legal loopholes. Patty Cannon didn't operate in isolation. She had accomplices, men who physically carried out the raids, buyers who knowingly purchased kidnapped individuals, officials who may have looked the other way. It was a system, and systems don't survive without support. Pause for a moment and imagine the courage it took for witnesses to speak out back then. Accusing someone like Patty Cannon wasn't easy. She had influence, she had connections, and in a deeply racist society, the word of a free black citizen often held little weight against a white property owner. Yet, eventually, the truth pushed through. And here's something that might surprise you. Even after her death, her name was used almost like a warning. Parents frightened their children by mentioning her. She became a symbol of betrayal and cruelty. A woman who weaponized the very idea of home and safety. But was she purely evil? Or was she a product of a brutal system that normalized human trafficking in plain sight? That's a hard question. It doesn't excuse her actions, but it forces us to confront something uncomfortable. Slavery didn't survive just because of plantation owners. It survived because ordinary people chose profit over humanity. The idea of a woman leading such violence also shocked people at the time. Society expected women to be caretakers, not captors. That contrast made the story even more sensational. Newspapers described her with dramatic language, painting her as monstrous. Whether every detail was accurate or not, the fear she inspired was real. As the years passed, her story blurred between documented crime and folklore. Some writers exaggerated numbers, others minimized them, but historians agree on one thing. Kidnapping free African Americans into slavery was widespread enough to cause national concern. And if you think about it, the psychological terror might have been just as powerful as the physical violence. Imagine carrying proof of your freedom at all times, knowing it might not matter, knowing someone could tear it up and drag you away anyway. That fear changes a community forever. When we look back at 1829, it feels distant. But the themes aren't. Exploitation, dehumanization, profit over people. These patterns repeat throughout history. That's why stories like this matter. Not to shock for entertainment, but to understand how easily cruelty can hide behind normalcy. Patty Cannon's death in jail closed one chapter, but it never brought full justice. No complete trial transcript, no detailed confession, just fragments, rumors, bones in the ground, and the silence of those who never came home. Some historians believe the lack of formal trial allowed myths to grow larger than facts. Others argue that even stripped of exaggeration, the core crimes were horrific enough. Either way, her legacy became a dark footnote in American history, one that many textbooks barely mention. On Night Archive, we dig into these forgotten corners because they remind us that history isn't always clean or heroic. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's terrifying, and sometimes it forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil doesn't always look like what we expect. As you sit here listening, imagine the last night of one of her victims. The confusion, the fear, the desperate hope that someone would intervene. Now imagine that help never came. That's the part that lingers. And maybe the most chilling question of all is this: how many other names like Patty Cannon were never recorded? How many stories were buried without documentation? We may never know. If this story moved you or made you think, I want to hear your perspective. Do you believe she acted alone at the top? Or was she just one visible face of a much larger criminal system? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters here. And if you found this deep dive important, please share this video with someone who cares about hidden history. Conversations keep these stories alive. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Night Archive for more untold stories that history tried to forget. Because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't myths. They're real people hiding in plain sight.